Hi there, welcome back. This is Nick Mitchell from Simulated Air Tanker Operations Facebook page. As you can see in front of me here is the Bell 412, the project that we've been working on for a long time now. It was shelved for a while for other projects, but I've revived it, and as of this moment, right now, as of May 9th, 2020, these will be released more than likely later this month, relatively soon. Um, they are nearly finished. I do have some cleaning up to do on them with some livery stuff. I've added a few more. As you can see, this is one of those. It's a fictional CAL FIRE livery. CAL FIRE never adopted the Bell 412. They've instead gone on from the Huey platform to the UH-60 Blackhawk, which they'll be using here shortly in the coming fire seasons. But as you can see, the Bell 412s are they've come along very, very well through the conversion process and modification process that I've done, and the other work that George Arana has done to get these ready for P3D. Now, initially I had thought that I was going to try and get these into FSX as well, but since FSX already has versions out there of the Heifer Control 412 that work already, there wasn't a need for me to really spend the extra time to change things or for it to be compatible with FSX. So the 412s are P3D version 4.4 and newer only platforms. I know some people are going to be a little upset by that, but with FSX being a legacy platform, even more so now than it used to be, some of these projects that we've been working on are just going to be excluded from FSX because it's going to be harder in the future to maintain, multiple platform compatibility, especially with, version 4.5, version 5 now of P3D, and then FS 2020 when it comes out. But with that aside, the 412s, in terms of specifications and everything goes, if you're familiar with the Hover Control 412s, these essentially have just about every modification or every animation still works on them. The only thing that I really took out was the movable searchlight down here on the bottom under the fuselage. It's fixed. You cannot move it like you could before. And even still, I think it was with a trim tab or something like that, you could try and move it around, but it didn't really work that well. That has been removed. I've also added, obviously, as you can see here, the belly tank has been installed on these, as well as a snorkel that's attached to the tailhook key. Now, the snorkel, as you see, is invisible on this model until you use the tailhook key. I just did that because there wasn't an easy way of attaching the snorkel that looked proper. So it's basically off of the belly tank until you hit the tailhook key, and then it essentially unslings the snorkel, which I'll show you in a little bit when I fire this thing up, and you'll see what I'm talking about. I've also attached, I'm debating on whether to leave the water effect that I have on this with it, or just leave it off, because people use it with Firefighter X, or can install their own water effect if they want to. I may do that just to avoid any conflict of the previous author of the water effect that I'm using. But in terms of bugs, there are some. You might be able to notice it right now. One of them. One is that for whatever reason I cannot get this model to cast a complete shadow in some terrain and things like that. I don't know if that's just how this is, or I did something in the model conversion process, or what. But as you can see, this is a known issue. It's a kind of a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, but realistically, I mean, most of the fuselage should cast a shadow. The other thing you'll see is whenever I go to try and start this up is that the control switches for the batteries will do a fluttering type, I guess, animation, if you will. It's a bug, I guess, with P3D, and I haven't been able to work that out, but it really doesn't affect the startup process at all. It's just more of an annoyance than anything. The virtual cockpit, it all works. As you can see in here, It's all put together. Everything works. There's no boxes or missing missing panels or anything like that. One thing that is missing still, I haven't figured or fixed yet, is that as you can see, the door animations, because the doors are open, I haven't fixed that yet. But as you can see, all the doors are open. Those animations still work. It has animated the rotors for rotor flex, for whenever you start up and shut down, and when you increase power setting. I don't know if you can really see it in this. You can see them move slightly. But yeah, so this helicopter does have a ton of features. As if anyone, like I said, remembers the original, there was a lot of features that it worked on. We try to keep all those over into P3D. It's a great model, still flies great. George implemented some changes to the air file that actually ties the new sounds that he designed. He updated the sounds so it's more realistically. They sound better than the old ones. I mean, obviously there was some years have passed, so I'm glad that he was able to, update it along with this basically fully updated package. But he tied the engine RPMs to the actual sound, so they actually mesh well. So when you spool the helicopter up, the engine RPM sounds match the rotor speeds and all that. Adds for pretty realistic startup and shutdown, as you'll see. And I mean, overall, I think these turned out really, really good. Probably some of the best work I've put out for as far as model conversions go. I mean, granted, the helicopter was pretty much already done and built, but I just kind of added to it, and then George helped a lot with, basically getting it so that a lot of these animations were able to be kept and moved over to P3D. So we'll go ahead and the startup procedure for the 412. If you're familiar with the hover control 412, it's not a whole lot different. We'll bring up the. As you can see, this is what I'm talking about with the fluttering switches. I'm going to make sure that all of our fuel pumps are engaged. On. Okay. Sure, our batteries are on. As you can see, it's still fluttering around, but this doesn't affect the startup at all. So we'll turn our inverters on here. Make sure, inverters are working. So now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and fire up this thing. Now I suggest you click this up to 100%. What I happen to do is I actually crank the rotor RPMs up to, or engine RPMs up to 100%, and then once both engines are spooled, I spool them down to what I consider ground idle, and then before I'm going to take off, I spool them back up to 100%, which is kind of how they do, and they sit on the ground a little bit before they take off. So, all right, we'll go ahead and start up. Engine 1 good. Start engine 2. And we're getting ready to spool up. Alright, we'll reduce engine power to ground idle. And close our doors. You can see the lights work. I did add pseudo rig rag lights for the landing lights, but we'll go ahead and spool these up to 100% and get ready to take off. As you can hear, the sounds are much more realistic compared to the old sounds. Go ahead and lift off. And watch the rotor flex. We'll go ahead and drop the tail hook, and you can see the you'll be able to see the snorkel appear. You can see, you click the tail hook button and it disappears. So you can use it for a rescue configuration without the snorkel down, or like I said, for firefighting operations, you can extend the snorkel. Go ahead and put it back down, and we'll shut it down. We'll listen to the shutdown sounds. Now what I do, whether it's realistic or not, I don't know. I just know this is what I do. I'll lower the engine RPMs down. You'll hear the engine spool down. This is what I was talking about, what George did with the sounds. We'll give it a few seconds. You'll hear the engine RPM start to come down, the rotor slow down. Now there is also a sound bug where you can hear the ground rustling underneath the skids, basically, when you come in and land. That's also an issue that I haven't been able to figure out yet, but more of a minor annoyance than anything. So you can hear the engine RPMs are coming down, and then you can shut down, auto shut down whenever you do cut fuel. This is what I do. I just hit my auto shutdown sequence, and she'll shut down. And the shutdown sequence for the rotor speeds and everything are fairly realistic, so it'll take a good amount of time for the rotors to completely stop. So you can just let them spool down if you want to, or you can increase the collective and we'll actually slow the rotors down faster, and the sounds will obviously follow that speed as well. But yeah, so we'll go ahead and pause this for right now. So in order to talk about this a little bit further, so the model that I have here, it comes with two models. It will come with this version you see here and another version, which is essentially the Canadian, what I consider the Canadian version. It's really identical model-wise. The only difference being is back here on the skids, they have the snow skis. So there's only two, I think I used only two models, use that, and that's the Wildcat helicopters variants. They have the snow skis in the back on the skids. But with this pack comes with the 11 liveries, including this one here, this fictional Cal Fire livery. I have one other fictional livery that was included in the original Bambi Bucket package. I just included that just because to kind of like throw homage back to the original pack, the original 412s. But this comes with Cal Fire, which is fictional, Carson helicopters, which is the other fictional livery. It comes with Alpine helicopters from Canada. There's two liveries for Kestra helicopters in Australia. There is two for Wildcat helicopters from Canada. One's in the typical Canadian operation colors. The second is in the New South Wales Rural Fire Service contract livery, so when they ship them down to Australia for fire season, that's one that's marked up that way. The other ones are the Los Angeles City Fire Department. That came with another original pack from, I believe, it's Kirk Sunley. I think that's how you say his name. I simply modified the livery to be more realistic to what the real livery looks. There were some inconsistencies with it, so I changed it to match the LA City Fire 412s more accurately. I also included Los Angeles County Fire in this. I also did San Diego Fire, which is another kind of infamous livery. I would say it's probably one of the best liveries I've seen out there. So I had to include that, as well as Orange County Fire Authority in Orange County. So obviously, as you can see, I did most of these U.S. liveries and the California operators, since most of the California counties or even city agencies in Southern California actually use the 412 in some capacity, either for firefighting or rescue or both. So I had to do those because I've seen all of them in action, so I had to represent those, along with, like I said, a couple of these fictional liveries. So And I decided to do a Cal Fire library because, I mean, people obviously know that P3D lacks any kind of Huey variant that's freeware. Basically, any Huey that's out there right now, at least as far as I'm aware of, is payware, or it's a personal modification in Model Converter X. So I wanted to do the 412s and bring them to P3D, since there's really no freeware options for people to do. And granted, this is a Helitanker version, but it can be used as a rescue version. Obviously, it's got the hoist on the side, which obviously is not functional, but maybe at some point either somebody else can do a modification for the hoist to work, or maybe I can do one later on once I figure out how to do that. But that's kind of like a quick update on the Bell 412s. I may do a longer update video like I had been for the series briefs. I may do one a little bit later on for following up on this and the process of the DC-10s. And if you've been following the page, I've also gotten my hands on the Verdavia P2 Neptunes, which if you're not familiar with that, you should go check them out, because they do have an FSX version and a P3D version of the remastered P2 Neptune, and this package includes the two air tanker versions from Minden Air Corps. Now, they're both the same model with very little differences, but it's an air tanker nonetheless, so you can check it out. I will say, without getting too far off tangent, without going too far into it, but that model, they didn't change a whole lot, so if you're looking for a huge update in difference for that remastered Neptune, I'd say remastered is a fairly loose term in terms of this. All they did was essentially make it P3D and FSX compatible. They cleaned up some things, but it's relatively the same model. If you're familiar with them back in AlphaSim days, it's really the same airplane, just modernized slightly. So yeah, and I'm also looking at creating a list of modifications to maybe release for that, to kind of update it to where I think it should be. But yeah, so anyway, yeah, so stay tuned for the Bell 412s. They will be released later this month. I don't have an exact date yet, but you can keep up to date on the Facebook page, because I am updating it again. Granted, we had a bit of a hiatus there for a little bit, with all the COVID-19 stuff going on, and me being busy doing other things in that time period. But yeah, so stay tuned. There's definitely more stuff coming, and thanks for watching.